Hello, everybody. You are able to hear me? Hello. Is the screen visible to you? Okay. We start in 1 minute. Okay, no issue. Now I think should start the lectures. Hope everybody is fine in this corona time. Please take care of yourself. So today's topic of lecture is your cardiac muscle. Till now we have completed your nerve physiology and your skeletal muscle physiology. Portion of skeletal muscle physiology that is related with metabolism. We will discuss maybe in 2-3 days, maybe next class or maybe after that. But today I'm going to discuss something about cardiac muscle with you. So this diagram would be very much familiar to you all. You must have drawn this diagram in your class 10. So this is a four-chambered human heart. So you know that you have two atria and two ventricle. On the right side you have right atrium and right ventricle, and this right atria is connected with your right ventricle through tricuspid valve. And from your right ventricle, a pulmonary artery is coming, and this carry the blood from your right ventricle to your lungs. Now on the right side, we all know that the right side receives your deoxygenated blood from your throughout your body, and through superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, this blood is entering into the right side of your heart. Through right atria and through tricuspid valve, they enter into right ventricle, and through this pulmonary artery, they are being pumped into the lungs, where oxygenation of this blood happens. And after the oxygenation, this oxygenated blood through pulmonary vein, they enter into the left atria. Now this left atria is connected with your left ventricle through aortic through mitral valve, and from your left ventricle, this blood is pumped into the aorta, into your systemic circulation. So basically, on the right side of your heart is receiving your deoxygenated blood from your systemic circulation, and your left side of your heart is getting your oxygenated blood from your pulmonary circulation. So these are some very basic things that you would be knowing. In detail about that you will be learning when cardiovascular system would be taught to you. Now, if you see your the cardiac musculature, so you will observe that your heart is made up of two types of fibers. One is your contractile fiber, and another is your excitatory and conductive fibers. Now, most of your atria and ventricles, they are made up of contractile fibers, and we know that your heart is involuntary. That means you can't control the rate at which your heart can beat. The contraction of heart is not under your control. Your heart continue to beat, start beating from the day of your birth till your death. So from cradle to grave, your heart keeps on beating, and that is making you to live. So in your heart, there is a pacemaker tissue, which is responsible for genesis of impulses, and in response to these impulses, your atria and ventricle are contracting. So these excitatory and conductive tissue, the function is that they generate impulses, and after generation, these impulses are conducted throughout your heart very rapidly through these conductive tissues. So your heart is made up of two elements. One is your contractile fiber, another is your excitatory and conductive fiber. See, if you see the purpose of your heart, what is the purpose of your heart in your human body? Main purpose of your heart is to act as a pump. This is the thing that your heart is doing. Okay, they are pumping blood continuously throughout your body, and this blood is carrying your oxygen and nutrients to each and every cells of your body, which is required for your growth and metabolism. So now in this diagram you can see some green type of lines are there. So these green types of line is showing your conductive fibers. You have SN node where your impulse is generated, and this impulse once generated, they are being running through these conductive fiber, and they are carrying this cardiac impulses rapidly throughout your heart, so that there could be synchronous contraction of right and left ventricles. Okay, and this pink color you are showing, this is your contractile fibers, which are contracting and generating force, and because of this pressure or force, your blood is pumped either into the lung or into the systemic circulation, depending upon which ventricle it is. If right ventricle is contracting, they will pump the blood into your pulmonary circulation. If your left ventricle is contracting, they will pump the blood into your systemic circulation. Now, if you see the structural organization of your cardiac muscle, so just like the skeletal muscle they have started, that means under microscope, if you see, you have a dark and light pattern is there. A and I band is there. So this give a started up there. Second is that they are involuntary in nature. That means you can't control the contraction of your heart. Heart has a in situ pacemakers which are generating its own impulses, and because of these impulses, your heart is contracting or relaxing. Though the rate of your heartbeat can be regulated from your higher centers through your sympathetic and parasympathetic, but genesis of impulses which is causing the heart to beat, that is arising from the heart itself. That's why if you take the heart, if you cut your heart away from the human body also, then also you can see the heart may be contracting and relaxing. Okay, they are involuntary in nature. Third very important property is branch. This is one of the difference with respect to your skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle were not branch. Here, the cardiac muscle are showing a branching pattern, and these branches of one cardiac muscle will get connected into get connected with the branches of other cardiac muscle, and they interdigitate freely with each other. And because of this connection of one cardiac muscle with another cardiac muscle through branching, the cardiac musculature function we call as they are functionally syncytial. Okay. So at the point of contact of two muscle fiber, if you see, there are extensive folding of the membrane, and this extensive folding of the membrane at the point of contact of two cardiac musculature, we call that as interconnected disc. And this interconnected, you can see here, these are interconnected discs. And these at these interconnected discs, there are a lot of gap junctions are there. Okay, and we all know that it is through the gap junctions the ions can move from one cell to another cell without going into the extracellular fluids. So this gap junctions allow ions to move from one cardiac cell to another cardiac cell, or the membrane depolarization or action potential to travel from one cardiac muscle to another cardiac muscle, and that makes the cardiac musculature as functionally syncytial. Now, if you see your atria and ventricle, the arrangement, you will notice that your atria and ventricle are separated from one another through a fibrous sheet in between them. And the only point of contact between your atria and ventricle is your AV node. Okay, this is your AV node, atrioventricular node. So through this AV node, your atria and ventricles are connected. Otherwise, the whole atria is separated from the ventricle through a fibrous sheet which is present in between them. Now, if you see at the atria, your right and left atria, you will see that the musculature which is making the atria, all this musculature are somewhere connected to each other through branching, through interconnected discs, through the gap junction. So, if at any one point some depolarization is produced at one location, then this depolarization will run throughout the atria. It will pass from one cell to another cell and another cell to another. Similarly, if you see the ventricle, at any one point, if some depolarization is produced, it will be conducted from one cell to another cell, another cell to another cell, because they are connected through branching, through interconnected discs, through gap junctions. So, with respect to action potential, your atria act as a functional syncytium. Similarly, your ventricles, they act as a functional syncytium. That's why we say that in heart, the cardiac muscle form through syncytium. Atria ventricle are separated because of the fibrous sheet. Okay? And atria act as one syncytium and ventricle act as one syncytium. Yeah, if you see the anatomical aspects of your cardiac muscle, you will see that if you see the dimensions, Mostly the cardiac muscle length is about 100 micrometer long and about 15 micrometer broad. And just like a skeletal muscle, if you see the cardiac muscle, they have the same arrangement. They have abundance of sarcoplasm and they contain all the cell organelles. And inside the cardiac muscle fiber, you will be having just similar to skeletal muscle, the parallelly arranged myofibrils. And just similar to skeletal muscle, these myofibrils are made up of thick and thin filament. Thick filament is myosin and thin filament is made of actin, troponin, and tropomyosin. So, with respect to if you see the cardiac muscle and a skeletal muscle fiber, they have the same composition is somewhat same. One of the difference is there with respect to a sarcotubular system. Now we all know that sarcotubular function, the function of sarcotubular function in skeletal muscle was that they carry the wave of depolarization to the inside of muscle fiber, plus they cause release of calcium which is required for contraction from terminal cisternae of sarcoplasmic reticulum. And if you see the sarcotubular system of skeletal of cardiac muscle, there is some difference. First difference is that here the T tubules penetrate at the level of Z line. In skeletal muscle, we have seen that T tubule was penetrating at the junction of A and I band. That's why we say that in skeletal muscle, every sarcomere is having two T tubules, because in one sarcomere you have two AI junctions. But if you see the cardiac muscle, then you will observe that T tubule is penetrating at Z line. That means every sarcomere of cardiac muscle is having only one triad or T tubules. So, in the if you see the sarcomere of skeletal muscle, you will be having two triad per sarcomere, but in cardiac muscle, you are having one triad per sarcomere. Secondly, if you see that the dimension of the T tubule, the diameter of the T tubule of cardiac muscle is more as compared to the diameter of skeletal muscle, it is about 5 times. Second important difference that this T tubule of cardiac muscle is filled with mucopolysaccharides, which are electronegatively charged particles. And because of this negatively charged mucopolysaccharides, which are present in this T tubule, large amount of extracellular calcium is present in the T tubule bound to these negatively charged mucopolysaccharides. And as compared to skeletal muscle, the sarcoplasmic reticulum is less developed. So, important difference is that in cardiac muscle is having one triad per sarcomere. Second, diameter is more. Secondly, these T tubules are filled with negatively charged mucopolysaccharide, and because of that, they are storing large amount of extracellular calcium in the T tubule. Now, coming to the excitation contraction coupling. So we all know that excitation contraction coupling we have discussed in the skeletal muscle. Excitation is an electrical event, that means impulse is coming, originating, and that impulse is causing depolarization. And if this depolarization is up to level of threshold, they will develop action potential. Once the action potential is developed, it will cause mechanical contraction. Got it? And this electrical and mechanical event are coupled through an ion which we call as calcium ion. Because the purpose of this electrical event is to increase the level of calcium in the sarcoplasm, and in response to this increase in calcium, there will be contraction. And that we know how this, what is the role of calcium. Wow. Now we know that resting membrane potential of your cardiac muscle is about minus 85 to minus 95 millivolts. Now we will see that how this excitation contraction coupling is happening, and what is the difference in the excitation contraction coupling of cardiac muscle with respect to skeletal muscle. Now we all know that in skeletal muscle there was T tubule, and in the T tubule there was a receptor, a voltage gated calcium channel that was called as dihydropyridine receptor. This dihydropyridine receptor in the skeletal muscle was connected with a ryanodine receptor, physically connected with a ryanodine receptor, which is also which is a ligand gated calcium channel, which is which is present in the terminal system. Now, what was happening in the skeletal muscle? When the action potential travels along the G tubule, the dihydropyridine receptor get activated because of this change in voltage, and because of that there is change in configuration of dihydropyridine receptor. And because of this change in configuration of dihydropyridine receptor, the ryanodine receptor which was connected with the hydropyridine receptor, that opens, and there was a release of calcium from sarcoplasmic reticulum into the sarcoplasm, and then this receptor was acting over the troponin, and then transport tropomyosin was moving away from its place. Then the head of myosin was making contact with the tape, and then the head of myosin was flexing, and then the actin was sliding over the myosin filamen. This was happening. So what is the difference in your cardiac muscle? In cardiac muscle also you have dihydropyridine receptor in the T tubule, and you have ryanodine receptor, which is present in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now, one thing before that, remember in skeletal muscle, the calcium which was required for the contraction, they was coming from inside of the cell. That was all the calcium were coming from the sarcoplasmic reticulum of the muscle fiber. There was no role of the calcium which is present in the extracellular. Now, keeping this in mind, just see how the contraction is happening in cardiac muscle. Now, in cardiac muscle also you have dihydropyridine receptor. This red one is your dihydropyridine receptor, and there is a ryanodine receptor in the terminal cisternal of your cardiac muscle. But here you don't have any physical connection between dihydropyridine receptor and the ryanodine receptor, which is present in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now, what happens when there is a genesis of action potential? The action potential will travel along the T tubule, and this action potential will activate the dihydropyridine receptor, and because of this activation, this voltage gated calcium channel will open, and because of opening of this dihydropyridine receptor, the calcium which is present in the T tubule, and this calcium is extracellular calcium, this calcium will move inside the cell. Now this calcium will go and they will bind with ryanodine receptor which is present in the terminal cisternal. Now, because of binding of this calcium with ryanodine receptor, this ryanodine receptor will open. And when this ryanodine receptor will open, the calcium from which is present in the terminal cisternae of sarcoplasmic reticulum, that will come out. And this calcium will cause contraction. So you notice that the calcium which is present in the extracellular fluid plus the calcium which is present in the intracellular fluid, both are participating in muscular contraction. That means for cardiac muscle contraction, the extracellular calcium plus intracellular calcium both are important. Now you see how this process is happening. This is the action potential. It is causing configurational change, and because of that, there is the opening of the ryanodine receptor. This will bind with the ryanodine receptor, and because of that, the calcium is coming out. Got it? And this is increasing the level of calcium. So this type of thing we call them as calcium activated calcium release. In skeletal muscle, we were having voltage activated calcium release. So in skeletal muscle, we have voltage activated calcium release. In cardiac muscle, we are having calcium activated calcium release. So with respect to source of contraction, with the source of calcium for contraction, one difference between cardiac and skeletal muscle is that in skeletal muscle, most of the calcium which is required for the contraction is coming from within the cell, from the sarcoplasmic reticulum which is present inside the cell. But in the cardiac muscle, the calcium is coming from both outside and inside. That means the calcium of extracellular fluid and calcium of the intracellular fluid both are required for contraction. Now coming to the relaxation, how the cardiac muscle is relaxing. So for relaxation also we have seen in skeletal muscle that relaxation will happen only when the level of calcium in the sarcoplasm will decrease. Got it? So in the sarcoplasmic reticulum, we have calcium ATPase pump, and this calcium ATPase pump was pumping the calcium from the sarcoplasm into the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And when the level of calcium will decrease in the sarcoplasm, the interaction between actin and myosin will stop. As a result, muscle will relax. Now, in cardiac muscle, we have seen the calcium was coming from two sources. One source was that it is coming from outside, that is your extracellular calcium, which is coming inside the cell through dihydropyridine. And one source was your sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is coming from your terminal system. Now, to reduce the level of the calcium which is coming from the inside from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, they should go inside the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and the calcium which is coming from the outside from extracellular fluid, they should be pumped back into the extracellular fluid. So, for relaxation, you have two pumps. One is your calcium ATPase, just like skeletal muscle, which is pumping your calcium back from sarcoplasm into the terminal cisternae or sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now the calcium which is coming from the outside, they are pumped to the outside through another pump which we call them as sodium calcium exchanger. Got it? That we call them sodium calcium exchanger. It is a antipode, and here one calcium is pumped out in exchange of 3 calcium which is pumped in. So here one calcium is going out and 3 sodium is coming inside the cell. As a result, the calcium level will decrease in the sarcoplasm of cardiac muscle. So for relaxation of cardiac muscle, you require two pumps. One pump for calcium ATPase, which is pumping the blood, which is pumping the calcium into the sarcoplasm. And another pump is your sodium calcium exchanger, which is pumping the calcium out of the cell, and 3 calcium have been pumped inside. Okay. Now, if you compare the excitation contraction coupling of cardiac and skeletal muscle, but in skeletal muscle, the trigger for sarcoplasmic reticulum, the trigger for the sarcoplasmic reticulum to release calcium was change in voltage. Change in voltage was causing conformational change in the dihydropyridine receptor, and because of this conformational change, the radiolin receptor was opening, and that was releasing the calcium. But if you see the trigger for calcium release for the sarcoplasmic reticulum in cardiac muscle, the trigger was calcium, which was coming through the dihydropyridine receptor from extracellular fluid inside the cell, and this calcium was binding with the radiolin receptor, and this was causing a conformational change in the radiolin receptor, and because of that, that radiolin receptor was open. Secondly, the calcium released in the skeletal muscle was proportional to the change in voltage. But if you see the calcium release in cardiac muscle, the calcium release is proportional to what is the amount of calcium which is entering into the cardiac muscle. More the calcium is entering from extracellular fluid inside the cell, more than will increase. Now we will discuss one drug called glycosides, and in that class, one drug is that digitalis. Now, this drug is used basically in cardiac failure, and the purpose of this drug is to increase the force of contraction. Why I am teaching you this drug? The purpose of teaching you this drug is that so that you are able to understand the importance of sodium calcium exchanger, which is taking a very important part in relaxation of muscle. Now, if you see in this diagram, on the basolateral side of the membrane, you have sodium potassium ATPase pump. We know what is the function of sodium potassium ATPase pump. So this pump cause efflux of sodium ion and cause influx of potassium ion. And because of this pump, the concentration of sodium inside the cell is at lower level. Now, because of this, decrease in sodium level inside the cell, there is always a gradient for sodium to enter from outside to the inside of cell. And this gradient is utilized by this pump sodium calcium exchanger. And because of that, 3 sodium are pumped in and 1 calcium is pumped out. Okay. So for functioning of this this sodium calcium exchanger, the method by which it is transporting the ion, it is by because of secondary active transport mechanism. And the functioning of this sodium calcium exchanger depend upon the functioning of sodium potassium ATPase pump. Because this sodium ATPase pump is responsible for creating a gradient for sodium to move from outside to inside. If this pump is not functioning, then there will be no entry of sodium inside the cell and there will be no exit of calcium from outside to the outside of the cell. Now what is happening? When you give this drug digitalis, they act over this sodium potassium ATPase pump. So because of this drug acting over sodium, it inhibits your sodium potassium ATPase pump. And because of this sodium potassium ATPase pump inhibition, what is happening? The amount of sodium which is present in the cell, that increases. As a result, the gradient of sodium for entry from outside to the inside of the cell is abolished. As a result, no more sodium will enter. As a result, no more calcium will come out. So because of this digitalis drug, the amount of calcium inside the cell is increased. And with increase of calcium concentration inside the cell, there is an increase in force of contraction. Okay. Now this was about structural detail and some excitation contraction coupling of cardiac muscle. See, as we go now, so I will be comparing everything with skeletal muscle, even when I will be teaching you with smooth muscle, so that you are able to differentiate the difference. So we have seen some differences are there with respect to your structure, that is the difference at the level of T-tubule, right? And what is the difference of cardiac muscle with your skeletal muscle with respect to your excitation contraction coupling. So as we will proceed our lecture, I will be comparing so that you are able to better compare the things, different types of muscle with respect to each other. Now coming to the properties of the muscle, cardiac muscle. So we will be discussing the properties of the cardiac muscle under 2 heads. One is your electrical properties and one would be a mechanical property. So in its electrical property, you have excitability. It is also known as bathmotropism. Okay. Then second is your the second is your automaticity. Automaticity is also known as chronotropism. Third is your conductivity, which is also known as bromotropism. Okay. If the muscle is more excitable, it is bathmotropism. It is more bathmotropism. If because of any drug, suppose excitability of the cardiac muscle is increased, we call that drug as bathmotropism. If because of any drug the rate of heart is increased or automaticity is increased, we call that drug as chronotropic. If because of any drug the speed of conduction of impulses in the heart is increased, we call that drug as bathmotropic. So these are the terms you should know, that bathmotropism means excitability, chronotropism means automaticity, and bromotropism means conductivity. Now coming to first excitability of bathmotropism. Now we know that what excitability means. We know that excitability means that it is ability to respond to a stimulus. When you give a stimulus, whether there is some change at the level of membrane, some membrane potential change is happening or not. If there is changes, we say that cell is excitable. If there is no changes happening, we say it's not excitable. Most of the cells in your human body is excitable. They are depolarizing whenever a stimulus of adequate strength is given to them. So in cardiac muscle also it's a excitable tissue, and but the depolarization or the electrical changes which they produce 2 types of electrical events depending upon the location where the stimulus is given. In atria and ventricle, that means in your contractile fibers of your cardiac muscle, the they produce fast action potential. The stimulus is producing fast action potential. And in pacemaker tissue or in conducting fibers, they are producing slow action potential. So we will discuss about fast action potential and slow action potential. At this level, remember, in atria and ventricle or the contracting fibers of your cardiac muscle, the stimulus is producing fast action potential, and in pacemaker tissue or conducting fiber, they are producing slow action potential. But this is the diagram of fast action potential, which you will get whenever you will stimulate or atria or ventricle. So here you can see that there is a rapid phase of depolarization, and this repolarization is happening in steps, in phases. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Phase 1 is the initial repolarization. Phase 2, there is the formation of plateau. Repolarization is somewhat delayed. Phase 3, it is again phase 3, it is the rapid repolarization in the later phase. And phase 4 is that once the membrane achieves its action potential to restore the ionic composition, there is the activation of sodium potassium ATPase pump, so that whatever the sodium has entered into the cell during depolarization will go out, and whatever the potassium which has gone outside during repolarization can come inside. So basically phase 4 is for restoring the ionic composition. So here in this diagram you can see phase 0 is depolarization, phase 1, 2, 3, 4 they are denoting repolarization. Now you see that the phase 0 is very steep. Got it? So resting membrane potential is something like minus 85 to 90 millivolt. If a stimulus which is coming from SA node reaches the atria or ventricle, they will depolarize and it will generate an action potential. And this depolarization is because of rapid opening of sodium channel. And because of this rapid opening of the sodium channel, you can see the depolarization phase is very steep. And because of this rapid depolarization, we call this action potential as fast action potential. Now, if you see the repolarization is happening in phases. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So once the depolarization, because the depolarization if the membrane potential suppose reaches to our plus 20 or plus 30 millivolt from minus 85 or minus 90 millivolt, then there will be closure of sodium channel, and with that there will be opening of potassium channel. So there will be initial repolarization in phase 1. Now, after initial repolarization, what happens? There is the opening of calcium channel, long-lasting calcium channel. And here, because of opening of calcium channel, there is the influx of positively charged calcium ion from outside to the inside of the cell. Here, both these things are happening. Influx of potassium is also happening, and influx of positively charged calcium ion to the inside of the cell is happening. As a result, the repolarization is somewhat slowed and you get a plateau, because influx of potassium is somewhat counterbalanced because of the influx of calcium ion. And that the repolarization continues to about minus 20 millivolt. Then there is inactivation of calcium channel also. Now there is only one channel open, that is your potassium channel, and there is an influx of potassium. And because of rapid influx of the flux of the potassium, your membrane show rapid repolarization in phase 3, and slowly the membrane potential again reaches the resting membrane potential. At phase 4, there is the opening of, there is a sodium potassium ATPase pump get activated, and there is the restoration of ionic compositions of this cell. So you see in fast action potential, there is a depolarization because of opening of sodium channel. It is very fast, rapid, and there is a stiffness in the depolarization. That's why we call as fast action potential. Repolarization happen in phases, phase 1, 2, 3. Phase 1 is because of inactivation of sodium channel and activation of potassium channel. Phase 2, which we call as plateau phase, it is because of activation of potassium channel and because of activation of calcium channel. Phase 3, here is the inactivation of calcium channel and because of activation of potassium channel. and there is the activation of the potassium channel continue to act. Phase 4 is because of sodium potassium interface. Here in this diagram, you can see this is an action potential which is happening in cardiac muscle. Now, if you see the action potential of the cardiac muscle, you will see that in cardiac muscle there is a plateau. In skeletal muscle, you don't have this plateau. And because of that plateau, the duration of action potential of cardiac muscle is more. It is something like 250 to 300 milliseconds. But if you compare the action potential of a skeletal muscle, there is a repolation, there is a repolation, spike type of thing. And this spike type of action potential which is happening in skeletal muscle, the duration is very less, about 2 to 4 milliseconds. But the duration of action potential in cardiac muscle, it is in atrial ventricle, it is about 250 to 300 millivolt, 300 milliseconds, and that is because of the plateau phase which is present in action. Here you can see phase 0, and this phase 0 is because of opening of sodium channel here. And then there is the initial repolation, sodium channel get inactivated and potassium channel opens. Then there is a repolation, and this repolation is opening of potassium channel and calcium channel. Then there is a rapid repolation, and this rapid repolation is because of inactivation of calcium channel and potassium channel continue to act. Then there is a phase 4 because of sodium potassium interface problem. So these are the phases you should know. So coming to the autorhythmicity. Autorhythmicity, as I told you before, the heart can initiate its own impulse at constant rhythmical rate. So if you take the heart away from body of someone, cut into pieces, still you can see the portions are contracted. And that autorhythmicity is because of some pacemaker tissue which is present in your heart. So in pacemaker tissue, you have different pacemaker, but the most dominant pacemaker which is present in your heart is your SL node, sinoatrial node. Apart from sinoatrial node, you have atrioventricular node and Purkinje fiber. They can also generate the impulse. But since the SL node is generating impulse at the maximum rate, we call them as that this is the pacemaker of heart. And if you see in the pacemaker tissue, they have a specialized type of cell which we call as P cell. And these P cell are small rounded cells. They have few organelles and they're connected with each other through the gap junction. So these are some specialized type of cell which is present in the pacemaker tissue. Now, how this pacemaker is able to generate its own impulse? They are not getting any innervation from the outside. In the skeletal muscle, you have seen that there is a nerve which is coming from the ventral horn of the spinal cord, and at neuromuscular junction they were releasing a neurotransmitter that was acetylcholine. And that acetylcholine was acting over the nicotinic receptor which is present at neuromuscular junction, and that was opening the sodium channel, and that was causing repolation. Then action potential was developing in the skeletal muscle, and then the skeletal muscle was contracted. Or in very short, what we want to say that for contraction, the skeletal muscle needs a innervation by a nerve. If you cut the nerve, there will be paralysis in the muscle. Then cardiac muscle, you have nerve innervation through autonomic nervous system, through sympathetic and parasympathetic system. But these innervations are not generating the impulse. Rather, they are controlling the rate at which the impulse will be generated. If there is a dominance of sympathetic nerve, then the rate at which the impulse which is generated by the SL node that will increase, your heartbeat will increase. For example, when you go to your viva and suddenly examiner start asking you question from that portion which you haven't revised, what will happen? There might be sympathetic stimulation, your heartbeat will start beating. And if there is a parasympathetic dominance, then what will happen? The parasympathetic will decrease the rate at which your heart is generating the impulses. So, suppose you are relaxing in your home, you don't have any exam, you don't have any viva, you're totally happy, no one is there to scold you. What will happen to your heart rate? Your heart rate will decrease. It will come to a basal level of 80, something like that. So, your sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve are regulating the rate at which your SN node is generating them. But they can't generate the impulse from SN node. Normally, in your body, if you see, there is a parasympathetic dominance. Got it? Normally, our body में sympathetic dominance नहीं होता, parasympathetic dominance. Now we will see that how the pacemaker is able to generate its own impulses. Now the pacemaker is able to generate its own impulses because of one thing that we call as prepotential or pacemaker potential. Now, if you see the resting membrane potential of the pacemaker tissue, which is unstable. If you see the resting membrane potential of atrial ventricle, it is something like -80 or 90 millimeters. But here the pacemaker potential, resting membrane potential of pacemaker is fluctuating. From -60, it will slowly get depolarized on itself, and it will slowly become more positive, and then it will generate an action potential. So this unstable resting membrane potential is because of continuous changing membrane potential. Now, what is your prepotential? Prepotential is basically the slow depolarization to the firing level between action potential. Now, this definition you can mug up, but it's more important to understand this statement. The slow depolarization to the firing level between two action potential, is called prepotential or pacemaker potential. So, to understand that, if you see the action potential, this is your action potential of a pacemaker tissue. Okay, now this is a pacemaker potential. Now, suppose an action there was depolarization, and then after depolarization there is a repolarization, and at repolarization, suppose the membrane potential they have gone to the resting level of -60 millimeters. Got it? After getting repolarized, what happens? There is a automatic opening of a channel, and this channel is called as H channel. Why H channel? Because this channel is opening during the phase of hyperpolarization. So once after repolarization, the membrane potential still become a bit more negative, it get a bit hyperpolarized, and this hyperpolarization will cause the opening of a channel which we call as H channel. It is also known as funny channel, and because of opening of this H channel during the phase of hyperpolarization, what happens? There is an entry of sodium ions, and because of opening of this sodium ion, there is slowly this membrane potential drift towards more positive direction. And after some time, what happened? Along with this H channel, there is another positively charged ion channel opens, and that ion channel is your calcium channel, and this calcium channel is your transient calcium channel. So because of that opening of the transient calcium channel, the membrane potential start getting more depolarized, and slowly this membrane potential will slowly drift to the firing level of -40. At this level of -40, what will happen? There is the opening of another calcium channel, which we call as long-lasting calcium channel. And because of the opening of the long-lasting calcium channel, there will be depolarization, and the membrane potential will move towards zero. And then at the peak of depolarization, this long-lasting calcium channel will get inactivated, and there is an opening of potassium channel, which is causing the repolarization. And then membrane potential get repolarized, and then membrane potential again become a bit more negative and get hyperpolarized. Again, when it get hyperpolarized, there is again opening of H channel, and the membrane potential again start drifting in positive direction. And then after some time, there is an opening of again transient calcium channel, which further depolarize the membrane potential to the firing level of -40. And at -40, there is an opening of long-lasting calcium channel, and then there is again depolarization, and then again repolarization. So this shifting from resting membrane potential to the firing level. This is happening in an automatic mode, and this is happening because of pre-potential. So if you see the pre-potential, there it has two phases. First phase of pre-potential and second phase of pre-potential. First phase of pre-potential is because of S channel, because it's open in hyperpolarization phase. It is because of opening of the calcium channel, so sodium channel. And then you have second phase of pre-potential, and this second phase of pre-potential is because of transient calcium channel. Then you have depolarization. This depolarization because of long-lasting calcium channel. Then you have repolarization. It is because of potassium channel. Now, this is the action potential, which we call as fast action potential, which you are having in atria or ventricles. But this is your slow action potential, which you are getting in pacemaker tissue. Let's say node AB node 225. Now, if you see the depolarization here, it is because of rapid opening sodium channel, and this depolarization very steep and very fast. That's why we call it fast action potential. But if you see the depolarization here, this depolarization is not because of sodium channel, rather it's because of long-lasting calcium channel, and long-lasting calcium channel are slow opening channel. That's why the depolarization is not so steep. That's why we call them as slow action potential. So this is a pacemaker potential, which you get SA node, AB node, and this is your fast action potential that you get in atrial ventricle. This phase we call as pre-potential, that carries membrane potential from firing, from resting level to firing level. Got it? Now, SL node is the pacemaker tissue. You have different types of pacemaker tissue: SL node, AB node, the fibers. Even some tissue of atrial ventricle, they can act as a pacemaker tissue. But why SL node is called pacemaker tissue? Reason is that if you see the resting membrane potential of pacemaker tissue of your SL node, it is like minus 50. It is less negative as compared to other pacemaker tissues where which have a resting membrane potential of minus 60. So the pacemaker potentials are able to reach threshold level much earlier. Second, the rate of rise of peak potential is more rapid in SNO. It is something like 50 to 60 volt or millivolt per minute. So because of this less negative resting membrane potential and more rapid rise of peak potential, the pacemaker tissue of the pacemaker tissues of SNO, they are able to generate impulses more rapidly as compared to pacemaker tissues which is present in other locations. For example, which is present in your SM node, AB node, which is present in your AB node of Purkinje fibers. And this depolarization which is generated from SM node, they spread to other regions and they depolarize these areas before they can get depolarized on itself. So basically, the SL node is controlling the rate at which your heart is beating. Normal heart rate of humans is your 60 to 100 beats per minute. Anything between 60 to 100 is your normal. Less than 60 we call them as bradycardia. More than 100 we call them as tachycardia. Now, ectopic pacemaker. Remember, if your heart is able to generate cardiac impulse from any location except SN, अगर SN node के अलावा किसी और लोकेशन से cardiac impulse generate होता है, तो उस cardiac impulse को we call them as ectopic pacemaker. Ectopic pacemaker can happen, or ectopic impulses can happen in two conditions. One condition that if some other location of your heart start generating the impulses more rapidly than SNO. Second condition could be that if there is a blockage. Suppose SN node cardiac impulses is carried to the AB node, and from AB node to the bundle of his, and from there to right and left branches, which goes into right and left ventricle. If there is a blockage at the level of AB node, so what will happen? Whatever the impulse which is generated in SN node, they will not be able to go to AB node, and they will not be able to go to ventricle. So what will happen? Your AB node will start generating its own impulses, and your ventricle will start beating with rate that is synchronous with the impulse generation of your AB node. जितना AB node cardiac generate करेगा rate, उसी rate से your ventricle will start. So ectopic impulses can happen either if some tissues are generating impulse rate higher than SNO, or if there's a blockage, and because of that, the SNO impulse is not conducted. Now, if suppose your SN node is destroyed because of any disease, because of any reason, then your next pacemaker will be your AV node, because it is generating and your heart will start beating at the rate of 40 to 60 beats per minute. If your AV node is also damaged, then your next pacemaker will be a Purkinje system, and your heart will start beating at the rate of 50 to 40 beats per minute. Now, what are the factors which which influence your prepotential? And a prepotential, you can say heart rate. So if you see, this is a typical slow this action potential which is happening in your your SI node and AV node. Now the rate of cardiac impulses that is generated, that will depend upon the slope of your prepotential. If the slope of prepotential is increased, then your resting membrane potential is able to reach the threshold level more rapidly, and there is action potential. So if the slope of prepotential is increased, then your heart will start beating more rapidly. And if the slope is decreased, then your heart will generate the impulse at slower rate. So what is the influence of your sympathetic nerve? Sympathetic nerve, they are innervating, as I told you, their SN nodes, and these sympathetic nerves, they are releasing your norepinephrine, and this norepinephrine acts through beta 1 receptor, which is present in your sympathetic nerve. Now this, when norepinephrine acts over the beta 1 receptor, they increase the calcium influx, and as a result of that, you can see the slope of prepotential has increased. As a result, your rate of contraction and the force of contraction of your heart that has increased. Similarly, if you see the parasympathetic nerve are releasing acetylcholine. These acetylcholine act to a receptor which we call as beta 2 receptor. But because of this beta 2 receptor beta 2 the M2 receptor, because of activation of this M2 receptor, what will happen? There will be activation of potassium channels. There will be more efflux of potassium. As a result, slope is decreased. And because of this decrease in the slope, what will happen? There is a decrease in force of contraction plus decrease in rate of contraction. Because of this M2 activation, there is activation of potassium ion channel, and there is activation of calcium channel. So because of this two factors, that is activation of potassium channel and the activation of calcium channel, the slope is increased, and because of that, force of contraction and the rate of contraction both of it. Temperature, if you see that temperature will cause increase in heart rate whenever if someone is having fever and you see the pulse rate, you will see that there is an increase in the heart. So because of this temperature, increase in body temperature, the permeability of calcium ion channel is increased, plus also there is decrease in viscosity of cardiac pressure. As a result, your heart starts beating at faster. So with fever, this is the explanation why with fever there is increasing. Now, some ions are also affecting this. For example, in hyperkalemia, what happens? So if you see in hyperkalemia, on the outside there is more potassium. Got it? And since on the outside there is more potassium, that means the efflux of potassium to the outside will decrease. That means more and more positive ion chain will get accumulated inside the cell. As a result, there will be depolarization, but there will be a defective repolarization. And because of this depolarization and because of this defective repolarization, there is a conduction block, there is a decrease in excitability, and here in this condition, your heart will stop in diastole. So in hyperkalemia, there is stoppage of heart in diastole. Hypercalcemia, there is more of calcium ion, so there is a increase in increase in the myocardial contractility, force of contraction, and your muscle will go in sustained contraction. Your heart will relax less in relaxing phase, which we call as diastole, and here there is a stoppage of heart in systole. So in hyperkalemia, your heart can stop in diastole. In hypercalcemia, your cardiac contraction, there could be sustained cardiac contraction, and because of that, there could be stoppage of heart in systole. Now coming to the conductivity, this is our thrombocompression, which is another property of cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle, we know that it acts as a functional synthesis. We have seen that cardiac muscles are connected to one another through interconnected discs and through gap junctions, and because of that, impulse at one location can transfer to the other cells. Okay, but the speed of conduction through these interconnected discs is very slow. So for rapid conduction of impulses throughout the cardiac musculature, you need a conducting fibers. And these conducting fibers are your SN node, AV node, bundle of his, right and left branch of Purkinje fiber. Now through this SN node, if you see this is your sinoatrial node, this SN node is present in your posterior wall of right atrium, just lateral to the opening of superior vena cava. So this SN node generating with impulses. Now whatever the impulse which is generated in SN node is carried to the AV node, and this impulse is carried to the AV node through internodal fibers. There is the anterior internodal fiber, there is middle internodal fiber, and there is the posterior internodal fiber. So this impulse has been carried to the AV node, and this AV node is connected with a bundle of his. This bundle of his penetrates into the ventricle, into the interventricular septum, and then this bundle of his divided into two branches, right and left branches. And through this right and left branches, they move towards the apex of this heart, and then this bundle of his from apex of heart, they move toward the basolateral side. Now from this Purkinje fiber, you can see many fibers are coming through these right and left branches will divide into very fine branches, and these fine branches which is coming from the right and left branch, they will penetrate into the cardiac muscle or endocardium, and because of this Purkinje fiber, the impulses are conducted to the inside of uh, ventricles, and this rapid depolarization of both right and left. Now, if you see the muscles of cardiac muscle, the inside surface of cardiac muscle we call as an endocardium. Outside we call them as mesocardium. And the outside is the epicardium. Okay. So here, this is the way the impulse is conducted. That from SN node, the impulse is conducted to AV node through internodal fibers. Got it? Anterior, middle, and posterior internodal fiber. And this this AV node is connected to a bundle of his. This bundle of his penetrates into the ventricle. It moves 5 to 15 millimeter into the interventricular septa. Then it divides into right and left branches. Right branch will go in right ventricle, left branch will go in left ventricle. And this branch, right and left branch, will go to the apex, and then we move toward the basolateral side. And then this right and left branches give very smaller branches, which we call them Purkinje fibers. And this Purkinje fibers carry the impulses to the ventricles. Okay. Now, one concept we have to discuss, that is your AV nodal beam. Now, when the impulses are coming to the AV node, so it's not like that the impulses of AV node are rapidly transferred to the ventricles. Rather, if you see that at AV node, the impulses are to cross the AV node, the impulses take about 0.09 seconds. And for bundle of this, the impulses take about 0.04 second to travel. That means in total, if you see, there is a delay of 0.13 seconds. That means after 0.13 seconds, the impulses from your atria will reach the ventricle. There is a delay of 0.1 second. Now, why you want that delay to happen? Why you want that the impulses from which is originating from SN node in the atria take some time to travel to ventricles. The reason for that is that you see when the electrical impulses is generated in the atria by SN node, your SN node is contracted. Okay. Now, if the impulses travel very fast to the ventricle, then what will happen? Your ventricle will also contract. So what will happen? Your atria is contracting from up and your ventricle is contracting from down. The purpose of atrial contraction was what? If you see your heart contract, that we call as systole, and your heart relax, that we call as diastole. And this systole and diastole is similar for atrial ventricle. Now, if you see that how this things function in heart, so whatever the blood that is, suppose if we consider right ventricle, suppose the blood comes through superior and inferior vena cava into the right atria. So your right atria will contract, and because of this contraction of right atria, the blood will be pumped into the right ventricle. But for blood to move into the right ventricle, you need that your ventricle should be in the phase of relaxation, that means in the phase of diastole. If both atria and ventricle will contract, so what will happen? The force which is pushing the blood to the inside of the ventricle will be resisted by the force which is developing in the ventricles. As a result, there will be no filling of blood in the ventricle will happen. So what will happen? Very less amount of blood will be moving to the ventricle. And when very less amount of blood is moving into the ventricle, what will happen? Very less amount of blood will be pumped. So we want that when ventricle are contracting, your ventricle, when atria are contracting, your ventricle should relax. So we want that when there is a systole in atria, there should be diastole. For that, we need that the repolarization, which is coming from atria to ventricle, should somewhat be slow. So that first there should be depolarization or contraction of atria, then there should be depolarization and contraction of ventricle. So this is the purpose of AV nodal delay. You know why this delay is happening? Because see, if you see the speed of conduction in any segment of the heart, you will see that the speed of conduction in the Purkinje fiber is maximum, and the speed of conduction in the atria ventricular muscle is very less. The reason is that the speed of conduction will depend upon what is the amount of gap junction. More is the amount of gap junction, more is the amount of speed of conduction. Purkinje fiber has maximum speed of conduction because they have a very large number of gap junctions. AV or ventricular muscle have less speed of conduction because they have very slow speed of conduction. So very less amount of this gap junctions. So if you see here the speed of conduction, if you see SN node and AV node and bundle of it, the speed of conduction is very less. That is 0.05 meters per second. Why they have less speed of conduction? Because they have less amount of gap junction. Atrial pathway and ventricular pathway, if you see, it is 1 meter per second. But if you see the Purkinje system, the speed of conduction is 4 meters per second. Why? Because they have very high speed of conduction. So remember that reason for AV nodal delay is that at AV node at bundle of phase, there is less number of gap junction. That's why the impulses which is coming from the atria is somewhat delayed at AV node and at bundle of phase. So that first there should be contraction of atria and then there should be contraction of atria. Stokes-Adams syndrome. This Stokes-Adams syndrome is a clinical application. Whatever we have read in conductivity, that this Stokes-Adams syndrome very well explains this. So in Stokes-Adams syndrome, actually what happens, there is a conduction block at the level of atria, at the level of AV node. So what happened actually, the impulse which is coming from SN node is not able to move to the ventricle because there is a blockade at the level of AV node. So what will happen? Your ventricle will not get the depolarization, so your ventricle will not contract. So they will not pump blood. So because of that, what happened? There is a momentary decrease in cardiac output. There is a momentary decrease in the output of the blood which is coming from the ventricles. And because of that, what happened? Suddenly the person loses its consciousness because blood can't sustain hypoxia for much longer time. So for a moment, your ventricle is not contracting, they are not pumping blood, and because of this non-pumping of the blood, suddenly your brain is devoid of this oxygen, and there is a loss of consciousness and there are pains. Then what happened? After there is a blockade, then what happened? Within few seconds, your AV node will get activated, and then they will start beating. though they will start beating at slower rate. They will start beating at the rate of 40 to 60 beats per minute. And then because of depolarization or generation of impulses from your AV node, your ventricle will start contracting, though at slower rate. But after that, the circulation will be restored and the person will regain its consciousness again. So here in Stroke-Adams syndrome, there is a momentary loss of consciousness with painless, and it is because of blockade at AV node, and because of that, there is a no ventricular pumping of blood, and there is a hypoxia at the level of brain, and the person will go. But within a seconds, a fraction of a second, your AV node get activated, they will start beating, and they will start beating, and because of this impulse generation from AV node, your ventricle will get it. Now coming to the mechanical property of the heart, more important property, that is the contractility, all of law, refractive period, and the staircase effects. So we will discuss one by one each of them. What we mean by contractility, what is the all of law, refractive period, we are doing staircase effect. So this contractility is also known as inotropism. So there are many drugs in the market. For example, digitalis, we have discussed, which increases the force of contraction. So we call those drugs which causes increase in the force of contraction, we say that is a positively inotropism. So basically, contractility or inotropism is the ability of cardiac muscle to contract and to generate a force whenever there is stimulus of sufficient strength is applied. The stimulus is the impulse which is generated from SNO node. So in response to that stimulus, your cardiac muscle will contract and they will generate a force, and because of this force, the blood is pumped. So this is the function of the heart, is that to pump the blood into the circulation, in pulmonary circulation or in systemic circulation. So this contractility or force of contraction depend upon many things. We will discuss few things, that is your effect of preload, effect of afterload, your sympathetic and parasympathetic stimulation, staircase effects also, iron CFC, and effect of temperature. Preload, as the name suggests, preload. The load which start acting on the muscle before it begin to contract. So before the contraction, the load which is acting on the muscle, that load is called preload. Now for this, let's have some discussion about circulation. I told you that your heart has right side and left side. Right side of heart is having blue color, you can see, and this blue color is showing deoxygenated. On the left side, you have oxygenated blood that we are shown with red color. Now, what happened on the right side actually? All the deoxygenated blood from your periphery, they are coming to the right atria through superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. These bloods are coming to the right atrium, and through tricuspid valve, this blood is going to the right ventricle, and this is getting accumulated. Okay, and this accumulation of blood is happening during relaxation phase of diastole. When your ventricles are relaxing, when they are in the phase of diastole. So because of this collection, large amount of blood has collected in the ventricle. There is a stretching of the muscle because load is acting over the ventricle, load of blood which has been collected. So because of this load, your ventricle will get stretched. Similar to a balloon, if you take a balloon, you blow air, what will happen to the balloon? Air will occupy this space, they will exert pressure. So because of that, your balloon will expand. Similar is that the blood has collected during the diastole phase of ventricle, and because of the pressure of the blood, your ventricular musculature will lengthen, they will expand. So this is the load which is acting over the ventricle before the ventricle contract. And this load we call them as preload. And the amount of blood which has been collected in your right ventricle during the diastole, we call them as end diastolic volume. It is the volume of the blood which is present in the ventricle during diastole. So this end diastolic volume will decide what is the amount of stretching of ventricle. The more blood is collected, that means there is a more end diastolic volume. That means there is more stretching of the muscle. That means there is more preload. So the load which acts over the muscle before it start getting, before you start to ready, before you start to contract. And in heart, the degree it depend upon what is the degree of stretching, and that depend upon end diastolic volume. More the end diastolic volume, more is the stretching, and more there will be preload. Now it is said that more is the preload, more there will be contractility. That means more there is a stretching of the muscle, more there will be forceful contraction of the ventricle during systole. Now, why this? This is because of Frank-Starling law. We have discussed that in length-tension relationship of your skeletal muscle also. So basically, this Frank-Starling law was given for cardiac muscle, but it is also applicable for your skeletal muscle. It was given by two scientists, Otto Frank and Ernest Starling. And as per them, the force of contraction is the function of initial length of muscle fiber within the physiological length. Simple about them, force of contraction is directly proportional to the length of muscle fiber. जितना मसल फाइबर का लेंथ होगा उतना ही फोर्सफुली मसल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करेगा बट विद इन द फिजियोलॉजिकल। इसका मतलब क्या है? अगर आप एक रबर बैंड you stretch the rubber band, so you stretch a bit and then you leave, you will see that your rubber band will recoil with the force. Then you stretch the rubber band, अब rubber band को आप ज्यादा एक्सपैंड करो, and then you suddenly you will see that they will recoil with more force. अब और ज्यादा स्ट्रेच करो और रिलीज करो, so you will see that there will be increase in force of recoil. लेकिन अगर आप बहुत ज्यादा स्ट्रेच करते हैं तो क्या होगा? रबर बैंड बहुत ज्यादा स्ट्रेच करने में रबर बैंड टूट जाएगा. सिमिलर विद द मसल फाइबर. So up to a limit, if you do a stretching, you will see that if there is a more with stretching, there is a more force of contraction. They will contract more force. Reason was that very simple, which we have discussed in length tension relationship. We have seen that the tension will depend upon what is the amount of cross bridge that is being formed between actin and myosin. And this amount of cross bridge will depend upon what is the amount of overlapping between actin and myosin. More is the overlapping, more is the cross bridge formation, more is the tension. So what happened actually when you are stretching the muscle, what happened up to a level, because of the stretching, there is a more and more overlapping of actin and myosin. There is more formation of cross bridge. That's why there is an increase in force of contraction that lead to more contraction. Okay. So this was explained by Frank-Starling law. Why with preload there is increased force of contraction. The significance of this Frank-Starling law. This because of this Frank-Starling law, you see the output of two ventricles generally remains same. Okay, cardiac output from both the ventricles that you will see, that you will read in your CVF, you will see that generally the output of right ventricle, left ventricle is same, and that is because of this Frank-Starling law. Why? Because suppose the right ventricle is pumping more blood, that means, and suppose your left ventricle is pumping less blood, then what will happen? Right ventricle is pumping more blood, that means more blood will be going to the lungs. That means more blood will be coming to the left side through pulmonary vein. And when more blood is coming to the atria, more blood will reach to the ventricle. And when more blood will reach to the ventricle, your ventricle will expand. And there will be stretching. And when there is a stretching, your ventricle will contract more forcefully. As a result, the output of left ventricle will also increase. So you see that both right and ventricle somewhat they have same contraction. Second is that this is very also important with respect to cardiac failure. So in cardiac failure, there is stages. One is the compensated heart failure, another is the uncompensated heart failure. So in cardiac failure, what is happening? Your heart is not able to pump blood. So initially, when the cardiac failure develops in your heart tries to compensate that loss in function. And till it is able to compensate, it will compensate. And if you are not giving treatment, then slowly there will be further degeneration of your cardiac muscle, and then you will not be able to, your heart will not be able to compensate the loss, and there will be uncompensated heart failure, and then there will be suddenly drop of blood pressure, and there will be decrease in the blood which is pumped from the body. So this compensation is happening because of Frank-Starling. Suppose there is some degeneration process in the left ventricle, And because of this left ventricle, the left ventricle is not able to pump enough of blood into aorta, into the systemic circulation. So what happened actually is this left ventricle is able to eject some amount of blood, and some amount of blood remains collected in left ventricle. Now with one contraction, some amount of blood was ejected into aorta and some amount of blood remained in the ventricle. Then what happened is the blood which is coming from the atria, they also come, and the blood which has been collected in the ventricle, it is also present. So what will happen? The amount of blood in the left ventricle will increase. So in second bit, what will happen? When it will increase, what will happen? There will be more stretching of left ventricle. And when there is more stretching of the left ventricle, what will happen? Your, your left ventricle will contract more forcefully. So in the next bit, they will be ejecting more amount of blood. So somewhat the functioning of left ventricle, loss of functioning of left ventricle is somewhat is compensated because of the blood which has been getting accumulated in the left ventricle, and because of that there is more stretching, and because of that there is more forceful contraction. So this is the way that your Cram-Starling law is somewhat explaining how the compensation is happening. Similarly, your cardio, because of this Frank-Starling law, your heart adjusts your cardiac output as per the change in the peripheral resistance. Peripheral resistance is the resistance which is present in the blood vessels. That means at the level of bigger atria, arterioles. So heart is pumping blood from your heart. Suppose if you see the left ventricle, they are pumping blood from the left ventricle into aorta. So this movement of the blood will happen only when the pressure in the left ventricle is more as compared to pressure in the aorta. Then only the blood will move from higher pressure to lower pressure. Now what happened is because of some reason, there is an increase in the peripheral resistance. That means the pressure is increasing in the aorta. When the pressure is increasing in the aorta, that means your heart needs to contract more forcefully. Then only blood could move, because blood will move always from high pressure to low pressure. So what will happen? Whenever there will be pressure increase, initially there will be drop in the cardiac output. But what happens? Some amount of blood will be pumped from the left ventricle, some amount will be collected in the left ventricle. But with subsequent contraction, what will happen? There is accumulation of blood in the left ventricle. There is more stretching in the left ventricle, and then because of this more stretching, there is more forceful contraction. And because of the more forceful contraction, the cardiac output is somewhat restricted. So whenever there is an increase in the peripheral resistance, your contractility will also to compensate this. Okay. We coming to the afterload. The afterload is the load which acts on the muscle after they begin to contract. Okay. So if a load is acting before contraction, we call it a load. But the load is acting after contraction, we call them a preload. So if you see the heart, the preload is the resistance which is present in your blood vessels. Okay, this is the preload, and this will affect the contractility. So if the preload is increasing, then your heart needs to contract more. Okay, and if your preload is less, then your heart will contract less forcefully for the movement. And if you see the preload in right ventricle, and preload over the left ventricle, you will see that right ventricle is pumping blood into thorax, and because of they are pumping blood into the lungs, and the lungs is present in thorax, and this is a low pressure area. So the resistance in the pulmonary vasculature is very less. So this right ventricle need to generate less force. But if you see the left ventricle, they are pumping the blood into systemic circulation. And in systemic circulation, the pressure is very high. So your left ventricle need to contract more. So if you see, now coming to effect of sympathetic and parasympathetic, we have seen the effect of sympathetic over the heart rate. So with heart rate also, there is an increase in force of contraction, contractility also. Because sympathetic nerve stimulation will cause beta 1 receptor activation, which will cause activation of calcium channel, more into calcium channel, and because of that, there is a more force, there is a increase in force of contraction. Parasympathetic stimulation, whenever there is parasympathetic stimulation, acetylcholine is released which act over M2 receptor, and this M2 receptor activation will cause activation of potassium channel and inactivation of calcium channel. As a result, the force of contraction will increase. So staircase phenomenon. Staircase phenomenon, to understand this, suppose your heart happens to stop. Heart को stop करने का क्या तरीका होता है? You do parasympathetic stimulation. Parasympathetic has a negative effect over the cardiac contraction. This parasympathetic fibers are supplied by vagus nerve. So you stimulate a very strong stimulation of vagus nerve. So because of this strong stimulation of vagus nerve, there will be very strong parasympathetic stimulation, and because of that, there could be momentary stoppage of your heart. Now you leave vagus, stop stimulating. Then you will see that slowly the heart will start beating. And if you do the mechanical recording of the force of contraction of the heart, so you will see that when your heart starts beating after the stoppage, the initial force of contraction were less, but slowly the force of contraction will increase. So they will form a staircase pattern, or we call treppe. We have seen treppe in skeletal muscle. So treppe is a German word. It means staircase. So here you can see there is a cardiac inhibition because of very strong vagal nerve of parasympathetic. After that, the heart resumes its contraction. The initial contraction has no amplitude, the force of contraction is less. But slowly as the contraction begins, the force of contraction keep on increasing. So this increase in force of contraction is because of accumulation of calcium ion. Actually, what happens when this suppose after stoppage, when heart resumes its beating, some amount of calcium is released during contraction, and then during relaxation, this calcium goes back into the sarcoplasm. Now, what happens that all of this sarcoplasm calcium is not going into sarcoplasm. Some amount is remaining there. Then next contraction, again calcium will be released, and then during relaxation they will again go back. But again some amount of calcium will be left out of the sarcoplasm. So as the contraction proceeds, small amount of calcium getting accumulated in the sarcoplasm. And because of this accumulation of calcium in the sarcoplasm, if you see the subsequent contraction, the force of contraction is increasing. This is called your staircase. All along, with respect to cardiac muscle, if you have seen the skeletal muscle, it was applicable with respect to action potential at the level of muscle fiber. In skeletal muscle, in cardiac muscle, all along is applicable with respect to a syncytia. That means in your heart, you have two syncytia at the level of atria, at the level of atria. If one action potential, if you give a stimulus or threshold level to a atria, then you will see the action potential is created at the atria, and this action potential is conducted throughout the atrium, because these muscles of the skeletal muscle fiber are somewhat connected to each other through interconnectedness with ventricle. Similarly, with respect to ventricle, if at one location of ventricle, if you are giving a impulse of threshold level and if action potential is created in the ventricle, so this will be conducted throughout the ventricles. Okay. So here in cardiac muscle, all along with respect to action potential is applicable at the level of atria or ventricles. Now, refractive period. This is very important thing to understand, because this is one of the things that explains why your heart never get tetanized. Skeletal muscle can be tetanized if you give a stimulus of very high frequency. What will happen? One contraction will fuse with another contraction, and you will get a sustained contraction. That we call as a complete tetanus. But if you give a stimulus a very high frequency to the cardiac muscle also, it will not get tetanized. And it is very important that your heart shouldn't get tetanized, Because we know that filling of ventricle happen when your heart is relaxing or when the heart is in the phase of diastole. When the heart is relaxing, so atria is contracting. At that time, your ventricle are relaxing, so the blood is moving from atria to ventricle. If suppose your atria is contracting and your ventricle also goes sustained contraction, it remains contracted. So what will happen? No blood will move from atria to ventricle. So there will be no filling of ventricle to diastole. And when there is no filling of ventricle to diastole, no blood will be ejected into peripheral circulation. Okay? So you don't want your heart getting tetanized. The moment your heart your cardiac muscle get tetanized, you will die. Now, why this cardiac muscle is not getting tetanized? And the answer is your action potential. So you have seen that the action potential of cardiac muscle has a very long duration, and that long duration is about 250 to 300 milliseconds. And this long duration is because of the plateau phase, which is present there in this action potential. The second phase of repolation because of plateau phase, and it is because of opening of potassium channel and opening of calcium channel. So because of this plateau, the duration of action potential has been down. Now, if you see the absolute refractive period of this action potential, it will include depolarization phase 0, then phase 1, phase 2, and 1/3 of phase 3. So this is absolute refractive period. And from the phase 3 to the rest of the thing is your relative refractive period. Now, we know that in absolute refractive period, whatever the strength of stimulus you are giving, it is not going to generate it is not going to cause any contraction. Okay, this is the absolute refractive period. Whatever the strength of stimulus is there, they are not going to generate impulse. Now, if you overlap this electrical event with your mechanical event, okay, so you will see that this mechanical event, if you see the contraction phase and most of the relaxation and the phase of relaxation, so the whole contraction and a phase of half of the phase of relaxation, a phase of relaxation, it is present in the phase of absolute refractive period of electrical event. That means most of the contraction and relaxation is completed with absolute refractive. That means you can't give a stimulus to the cardiac muscle, due to which the cardiac muscle goes in contraction during the phase of first contraction. सेकंड स्टिमुलस आप कभी भी दे वो हमेशा फर्स्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्शन के रिलैक्सेशन फेज में ही गिरेगा. And when second stimulus is falling in the relaxation phase of first stimulus, that means it is not going to generate a complete tetanus. Got it? So, because of the long duration of the action potential and because of this long duration of absolute refractive period, most of the mechanical contraction is completed. Contraction and relaxation completed with absolute refractive. So, cardiac muscle is not able to show complete tetanus. The duration of absolute refractive period is about 180 to 200 milliseconds, and for relative refractive period is about 50 milliseconds. So tetanus can't be produced in cardiac muscle, and it is because of this property your cardiac muscle continue to act as pump. Now coming to the musculature, something of metabolism. If you see the blood supply of cardiac muscle, it is very high. It is about 80 ml per 100 gram per minute. When we will read about the metabolism of the skeletal muscle, that you will see there, the blood flow is about just 3 to 4 ml per 100 gram per minute. But if you see the blood flow in cardiac muscle, it is about 80 ml per 100 gram per minute. So blood flow is very high. Secondly, they have large amount of mitochondria and they have very high content of microbiome. So all these three parameters, that means large amount of blood flow, large number of mitochondria and high content of oxygen pigment, that is microbiome. All this parameter is promoting oxidative phosphorylation, oxidative metabolism. And oxidative metabolism is a very efficient way to generate ATP, because anaerobic metabolism can generate the ATP at fast rate, but they can cause fatigue because of genesis of lactic acid. Now, if you see that under basal condition also, most of the nutrient or energy requirement of your heart is coming from fat, which is a bit different from carbo, the skeletal vessel. So in your heart under basal condition, 60% of energy is coming from fat, 35% of energy is coming from carbohydrate, and 5% of energy of your cardiac muscle is coming from ketone bodies and amino acids. Now coming to the last topic, that is if you see your heart, it is continually beating. From even your heart beating start in the womb of your mother, before the birth. So before the birth, your heart start beating and it keep on beating, keep on beating, keep on beating till you go to your grave. So this is working continuously 24 into 7 into 30 into many days into your year of ages you live. But it is not getting 30. So reason, nature has devised some mechanism, something I have taught you. So the first thing is your heart cannot be tetanized. Because whenever the muscle get tetanized, the energy requirement for muscular contraction that become very high. And whenever the energy requirement become very high, there's always a chance of there's always a chance that anaerobic metabolism will come in picture, and they will release lactic acid, which will cause something. So your cardiac muscle is not getting tetanized. Second, that they have almost entire metabolism. If you see, they have the whole setup of aerobic metabolism. And the whole setup of aerobic metabolism is because of high blood flow, 80 ml per 100 gram per minute, large amount of mitochondria, and large amount of oxygen carrying pigment, that is your myoglobin. Because of all these things, there is the dominance of aerobic metabolism. And since because of aerobic metabolism is operational at the level of heart, so large amount of ATP is generated without generation of any lactic acid, which can cause fatigue. So with this, we complete your cardiac muscle. The next lecture, I think I will discuss something about maybe muscle metabolism. No. I think we should discuss about smooth muscle, so that cardiac smooth, skeletal cardiac and smooth muscle goes continuity. And then we will discuss something about muscle metabolism, the last lecture. So we would be having 2 classes now, and after that these two classes, your nerve muscle physiology will be completed. So nerve muscle physiology, we have read about nerves, 4 lectures, and then you have your neuromuscular junctions, then you have your skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle we have discussed, and then we will discuss about speed. Now the last lecture something about muscle metabolism. So with this we complete your lectures today. Okay.